Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Tanish Katti here from the Football Digest podcast. And this is a very, very interesting episode when it comes to the world of football because we have David Chimbaza from UK. Hello, David. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Doctor. I'm very well, thank you.
Well, it's a very special occasion when it comes to football and this particular episode because of the fact that David himself also has a podcast which is called as if I don't think you would mind shouting you out for the podcast. It's called the Business of Football podcast, and it's a very interesting episode which we are going to have here because David has recently graduated from a very well-renowned college called as UCFB in the UK, where he has done his international football degree, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And it's great what David has been doing with his podcast as well when it comes to connecting with people, when it comes to interviewing some of the best guests, some of the best industry leaders of football, and getting their thoughts and getting them to connect with the people, not just of UK, but around the world. So I'll once again welcome you, David. And how's everything going on in UK with the off season in football right now? I mean, not with the Club World Cup,
Yeah,
but
true.
the regular season.
It's good. I think right now, a lot of the clubs, particularly lower down the pyramids, are getting themselves together, finding players, trying to prepare for the new season. But as you know, outside of the playing squad, it's still 24/7. People are still, as indulged as ever in the way that football's going at the moment.
Yeah, and when it comes to football, basically, and the football season, the regular football season has ended, but we have this new Club World Cup format with the expanded teams and from various confederations. But when you look at it, it's more of like the Champions League, right? Because in the top four teams that have qualified, today itself, three of them are from Europe.
Yeah.
That was expected, basically. Fluminense have basically done what Leicester City did in 2015. They have just come back from what do I say, from their expectations, and they have just shown the world what Brazilian football is all about. It's a great platform, definitely, but it's shocking when it comes to how long the season has been going on for the past year.
I think it benefits the non-European teams more because of the platform as you're talking about. They get a chance to play on let's say, the world stage because you're going to have European teams and fans watching their teams play. But I think it's ended up being the status quo where the same teams that we expected to be in the top four are in the top four. And it is just more games. I think player welfare is a big problem. I tried to think, I think players now might only have like one pre-season if they do the Euro cycle, then the World Cup, then the Club World Cup. That only leaves one cycle, and I'm sure that might even be filled up by the Nations League some of the seasons, particularly here in Europe. So it's just football, 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 and it just keeps on going. So I mean, I know they get paid a lot of money, but they're people and they need rest. It's a lot of football.
Yeah, and when it comes to injuries, we saw yesterday what happened with Musiala
Yeah.
with the ankle break. So I really hope he's okay. And also, it's a sad time for football, as everybody might know, with the passing away of Diego Jota and Andre, his brother. So definitely, we have paid the respects, and we do understand that outside of football, he was, I believe, one of the happiest mans
Yeah.
in the world right now, with winning the Premier League, with winning the Nations League, getting married, having three kids. But it's just a sad turn of events which has happened, and we do pay our respects from the Football Digest.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so moving on, life goes on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so David, basically, this episode is basically dedicated to football education, and someone being from one of the top colleges in the world when it comes to football education, I would definitely like to ask you, first of all, how and why did you choose to pursue a football education degree, first of all?
So when I was younger, I loved to play football, wanted to be a footballer, as I think a lot of people did. That didn't end up working out. And you kind of wonder, as you get to 16, 17, where your life's going to go, what kind of direction you want to go in. And I had no idea originally about this college or this type of an opportunity to study in football until about the very end of my time at college, which is, the way it works here is you go to, secondary school, then you have like sixth form college, which is between the ages of 16 to 18, and then you go to university. So I was coming right to the end of my time at college, and I found out about this football university. And naturally, because I love playing football, I looked into it and I thought, well, that could be something that I enjoy doing and spending the next 3 years studying. But even at that point, I didn't know what it would lead to. It was kind of just the idea that, well, it's football. I love playing football. It makes sense to go and study at some capacity in football. And I wanted to be an agent. Once I kind of read one of the brochures that they had, I thought, yeah, agent is what I want to do. And that's why I ended up picking my degree in the first place, because it was the opportunity to be able to do that, where I thought, well, I could lead down the path of being an agent. And within like the first two lectures that I had, our lecturer said, when everyone comes here, they want to be an agent. The reality is it's very hard to be an agent. So that kind of ended right there. But nonetheless, it was what I like to do, playing football. You learn football. So I thought it could be quite interesting to study for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and when it comes to football business, it's not just the clubs who are doing the business, it's the players. And as I mentioned, being an agent is something which many people dream of when it comes
Yeah.
to transfers, when it comes to sponsorship, contracts, every single thing related to the player and the clubs. And yeah, it's difficult, but people do make it. When it comes to football, it's just about the right opportunity. In my opinion, it's about the right timing. It's about the right opportunity, and it's just that you need to stand out. Not
Yeah.
not just you, but everyone who's involved in football.
Yeah.
We just need to stand out as a community, as a person, and bring our ideas to the table, and just hope, there's a bit of luck involved as well, and just hope that some person in a football club or in an organization is able to pick up that idea and get us on board. Basically, that's it.
Yeah. I agree. It's
Yeah.
I was going to say it's a point that I learned it during my time, that there's a lot of people that are very talented and very capable of working in football, and because I think a lot of people have the same level of passion, it makes it, I want to say, easier to put yourself into projects, because you realize that it's it's what you want to do. You're working in a community that you want to work in. Everyone has an interest in football to some degree that you're working around, and it's easy to talk about. So that makes it enjoyable to be a part of.
Yeah, and when it comes to football, as I've mentioned before, you have your own and you have your own podcast as well. And if I'm not wrong, it's going to be a year since its inception in
Yeah,
August.
yeah.
Yeah. So congratulations, first of all, on the consistency and the effort that you have done in creating that whole community
Thank you.
for your podcast. Just so I know, just before we move on to what the specifics were for your education, could I know what was the motivation behind creating this podcast and connecting with people?
So I always like to learn about different ways to network with people and to, communicate and reach out to new people. But once I graduated, I didn't get a job in football originally. Like nothing came up. And so I was a bit stuck in terms of, if I take a year out doing a normal job, which is fine, I could, I might lose some of the connections, or I might just lose some of the momentum, or whatever you want to call it, because I just graduated. It feels good, but it's like, what next? And really, the podcast just was the only way that I saw to try and meet people, meet new people. So it was as simple as that. It was just to keep in tune really with the industry. And to be honest, it still is. It's the only real way that I have an opportunity to meet with people and to connect with different people and learn from their experiences in different departments. And so that was it. It was just stay in the industry and somehow, until I get a job, really. I didn't think it would continue. I just thought until I get a good role, and that was it. That was the motivation, and I'm glad I did, because if I waited, it might have been difficult to then get back into the industry. Once you take 1, 2 years out, it can be tough.
Yeah, and we have seen you have who did you get in the recent episode? I can't recollect, but it was
Um,
someone who was very famous.
yes, Farai Hallam. He's an EFL referee, but he does various
Uh,
things outside of refereeing as well for the FA and the Premier League. So that was the last person I had on.
yeah, and it's great to see the progress that you yourself as a person and as a professional in the field of football have made. So kudos to that. And yeah, so when it comes to your football education, which is the main topic, could you just describe about how basically you when you got into it, when you got the admission into it, what was going through your mind and what were your expectations and what was the reality?
What was going through my mind was I was very happy because when I first found out, I was thinking, this is football. This is what I want to do my whole life. This is going to be so perfect and also really fun. Like, when you have a football talk with your mates and it's really loose and relaxed. Of course, it's a serious
Yeah.
professional environment, but it's the same industry. It's football. So I thought, yeah, this is going to be a breeze. I'm going to know everything because I just love playing football. If anything, it's just going to make me smarter on top of what I already know. Once I got there, you start to realize that it's different in terms of, the in-depth analysis and understanding how businesses in football work, how football clubs work. And then you come to a realization of don't really know as much as you think. And it can be a tough industry to learn. I think I could have, or anyone could learn that without education, but the education side of it just gives you a different perspective and a perspective where you kind of want to go out and reach out to people and learn more about what's going on because it's not the same as your football talk. And not just me, but a few of my colleagues also felt the same. Halfway through our first year, we were kind of thinking to ourselves, this is completely different to what we expected. We almost don't want to talk about what's going on a Saturday afternoon in the Premier League because we know a bit more about what's going on behind the scenes and what it takes to get a match going, to take what it takes to keep people happy, get more people into the seats. And so from that side of it, you learn and get a really good knowledge of the deeper understanding and the deeper appreciation of what it's like to work in football or what the industry is like. And then you have to, or I anyways, had to think, okay, now I know I don't know as much. I want to go out and learn a bit more and get more experience to understand how it all works. And yes, I love watching football. I love being a fan of football. I watch every game, tweet on Twitter, watch all the YouTube videos and clips, thinking that I know everything. But in reality, once you start working with people behind the scenes and you see football fans as you take yourself out of the perspective of being a football fan to now serving football fans, right? Because at the end of the day, they want to see their team win, and they also want to have a good experience when they come to the stadium. It's very different, and that was what I tried to learn as much as I could over the rest of my time at university.
And yeah, that actually basically fits in what I was going to ask you. In terms of getting the required tools and getting the required knowledge, there's a very important aspect when it comes to football education, and that is the mindset, basically. That you should have the right mindset of not just going in there for a job, but you have to have that mindset of being there to learn, being there to share your knowledge, being there to grasp as much as you can. So how was it like when it comes, because you might have met a lot of people who have different mindsets. If you might have been there for learning, but there would be other people who would have come in for just a job, looking for a job. So how much important is having the right mindset when it comes to pursuing a football degree or football education?
It's massive. I mean, you have to think football is naturally a very competitive sport because teams want to win, they want to compete with each other. So you do have to understand that what you're going to do is to get results for people when you're working at a club. It's not like any other industry, and that's what I've picked up, especially when I've spoken to people, they've said a bit similar. It's different because you're serving people who want to win as players, as managers, as fans, and your direct results will be shown in front of thousands of people every single week. So all the hard work that you do behind the scenes will come to fruition. And there's no hiding at the end of the day. So when looking for a role, when looking for volunteering, there's a level of this is not just a relaxed job. I can't really slack off. In whatever department, even if you want to be a club doctor, right? But you go, oh, I'm going to take it easy, and then your players get injured. Then the best players aren't on the pitch on a Saturday, and all the fans and all the managers are going, well, what's going on behind the scenes with the club doctors, right? So in every department, there's a level of you have to be prepared to understand that it's tough, it's competitive, but at the same time, it's hard, and patience is also part of that. And that's where I found that volunteering, which was what I did for effectively the whole second half of my time at university, is much better because the stakes are a lot lower, but at the same time, you still get that competitive feel where the club aren't paying you, which obviously is not ideal, but you can learn and get a feel for just the level of demand that's going to be put on you no matter what role you're in. But then the club aren't worried as much because they're not paying you. So they allow you to make a few more mistakes, which is inevitable because there's so many different complexities and so many different tasks that need to be done that need to come together to make sure that everything works out. And you have to, I'd say for me, it was understanding that whilst it's not happening now, whilst I'm not going to get paid now, I'm learning about what's going on. I'm learning about what it will take for me to pursue a long-term career in this role. And that's outside of the education side of it. Because even, like I said earlier, when speaking about knowing more about what's going on in the industry, it does give you a feel for just the intricacies that are day to day in every single club and every single organization and what it really takes to make everything tick. And the clubs are focused on themselves, but they have to work together again. And you learn that there's a lot more collaboration between clubs than I've even ever imagined. I thought that, Manchester City focuses on Manchester City, Manchester United just focuses on Manchester United, and they butt heads. But a lot of things are done together to make sure that at the end of the day, everyone's having a better experience. Yes, you want to beat them on the pitch. You want to do things better than them off the pitch as well. But there are levels of collaboration and working together that mean that clubs are a lot closer than I ever thought, certainly. And that takes time to know. That takes a lot of time to get used to at all levels, especially like lower down. You have clubs, directors having dinners together and lunches together. I'm sure it's the same at the top level, but I'd never seen it. So you learn a lot, and you learn that you have to be really open-minded. You can't just have a closed approach of focusing on yourself, focusing on yourself, focusing on yourself to a degree. It's quite complicated. I still sometimes find it confusing that it's such a big team game, but as the individual, have to be as prepared as you can to know that once you get into it, of course they'll allow you time to make mistakes, but it's a results business, and they're trying to win. At the end of the day, that's all it really is for. So there's a lot of different complexities around it.
Yeah, and it's a good point that I've mentioned when it comes to development of football, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. When it comes to the community that these clubs belong to, because most of these clubs have been there for hundreds of years, right?
Yeah,
They have been there for decades. Like clubs like Manchester United, clubs like Arsenal. These clubs have been there and they have been serving the community as well.
yeah,
And just like you have mentioned that Man City and Manchester United, they, even though they are rivals on the pitch, they have to serve the community on off the pitch, so that there is a growth and there is a development of the local community as well as of the local area that they are working on.
yeah,
So it's a good point that you have mentioned. And when it comes to you have, as you have mentioned, that you have volunteered in certain areas, you have volunteered, you have also worked with certain clubs before. So what was the most important learning out of all of that, all of those experiences?
good question. Most important lesson I learned, probably I learned a few. I would say probably the communication was a big one. I mean, when there's a lot going on at a club, being able to talk openly but very precisely about what needs to be done is so important. Clubs have, and not just clubs, but organizations like the FA, the Premier League, have a million problems. They have so many people to deal with, so many people to serve, that you've got to pick one. You've got to pick the most important one, and every department will have its own problem. So understanding the most important ones and then being able to communicate a strategy to be able to solve it is really important. I always naturally haven't been the best in terms of speaking and being, confident. So I found that quite challenging in terms of if I had an issue, I might be a bit more reserved necessarily. But I learned that actually that doesn't benefit anyone. If I'm trying to do it myself, then someone else doesn't know about my problem and, it could take twice as long to complete. Whereas if I say, look, I've got an issue with whatever I'm doing. Like, for example, I wrote out a program wrong one time for one of the clubs that I was volunteering, like, the match day programs. I put players in the wrong number and sent it out, which I didn't realize until it was printed the first time round because we did it on a match day. But the only reason why is because I guessed I didn't know the numbers of the players, and I tried to guess it in my head. And if I had just said it, because imagine it's going out to even like 500 people, so that's still a lot of people in the grand scheme of things that are probably going to pick up this program. If I had just said, "What's the number of these players?" Crisis averted, and then the chairperson, she had like so many other different things. She didn't have time to even really think about this mess up that I'd made as an example. But I could have made her life so much easier. She just give me the two numbers, I dial them in, she can focus on whatever problem there is. So that's what I really learned in terms of communicating. If there's a problem, just talk about it because you don't want to create more problems. There's already enough problems on and off a match day. And it's so high pressure, things happen so fast that you need to be on it as best as you can. Not everyone's going to get it right, but dealing with it in the best way by, as a team, talking about it, I learned that as a really important skill.
Well, it's really ironical when it comes to communication gap coming from a podcast
Yeah,
host, but
yeah, I know.
yeah, but it definitely is something that you have learned and you have worked upon it.
Yeah,
So it's a good thing, definitely. That's one of the most important points when it comes to the business side of football. You need to get your points across, not just for any mistakes or not just for any sort of questions, but even when you are pitching it to someone, even when you are saying it to the fans, saying it to the chairpersons at the board. It's really important how to communicate with these people. And when it comes to football education, not everyone is able to get the best out of it, because many people think that, yeah, getting into the college, doing the degree, that's it, their life is set.
yeah,
And there might have been some people in your batch itself, or maybe in your senior batches, which might have done the same thing. And what do you believe, what could go wrong basically when it comes to this mentality? Because we have talked about having the right mindset
yeah,
and when getting into the football industry, but there is a sad side to it as well when it comes to football education, that, yeah, people do just get the degree and then they are left jobless, they are left unemployed for quite some time, which increases their mental pressure.
yeah.
So what are the things that could basically go wrong, and why is it very important to have the right mindset, as I've already mentioned?
No, like you said, I mean, the ones that certainly that I've seen from people who haven't made it is they just think the degree is enough. Even if they get a first, the best grade you can get, but they have no experience on the side, they haven't put themselves into the industry because it's twofold, I think. Number one, you're gaining experience if you're doing volunteering or you're going out actively doing something. And when I say that, I don't mean going to a match every weekend and being a fan, but actually learning the behind the scenes of what it takes to put a game on, like what we've spoken about already. You're building your experience up, you're building your own skill set up, which clubs need. I think clubs, people in football, because it's so complex, because it is hard, they don't really have the time to train someone from ground zero, complete, like someone who doesn't know anything about the industry, doesn't know anything about what it takes, the pressure, the complexities. Even if they've got the best degree or the best grade, the clubs just don't have the time to sit there and train you about this is how it works, this is what you need to prepare for. Like it's just too much already they have on their plate to deal with that. So they're going to go for someone already who's taken the time to build the experiences, who's put in the hard work to train themselves and have the mentality ready to go. And even if it's not 100%, even if it's you're 50% there, but you've still got a level of experience, they can work with that because it will also be quicker to train you and to get you up to scratch. So those who sat back and who just let the degree do everything for them, they struggled. And I have some of my friends actually, they, I like them, don't get me wrong, they're my mates, but they started volunteering really late, like right at the end of the degree, because they realized at some point they've got housemates and friends who've been volunteering for nearly 2 years, and that's when it kind of clicked. Like, okay, I'm coming to the end of my degree. I have no experience. I've got to go and start now. And it's never too late to start. Like it's better they did than didn't. But everyone realizes that you can't just expect your degree to get you through there. And then the second part is also meeting people, because if you don't put yourself out there, you don't start to build a reputation or a name for yourself or prove to people that you're competent, it's so much harder to progress. Like my best friend, one of my housemates who works out Man City, I say about it on mine, he took an internship for 6 weeks that he didn't even want to do, by the way, because he thought he didn't have time, but he did it out of risk. But he did such a good job that the people who were managing the internship recommended him to the club to stay on. And now we got a full-time role like 6, 7 months ago, all because of the internship that he didn't want to do, but because he did, he was referred and they went up the chain of command. They're like, yeah, we'll take him on. And those who don't do any on the side work at all, they're not going to get that same level of recommendation because no one knows who they are. And that's the reality. If no one knows what you do, who you are, your skills, your weaknesses, how are they going to refer you and recommend you when, Man City would rather take someone that they've heard of, that they know, and, someone's worked with before who might be, like I said, a bit more ready-made than someone who is completely green. They have no idea about. And so at the end of the day, I just think you're doing yourself a disservice because you're gambling really with the fact that you might get one application out of thousands of people who apply for these roles, hundreds of people who apply for these roles, and you have no one knows what you've done. So there's always going to be someone that they probably will have heard of who has a bit more experience. And I just think it's a bit of a waste. It's a bit of a shame, really. You're not putting yourself out there, but also it's enjoyable. I think working in football, working in the industry, it's a lot of fun. And alongside the education, you can put what you're practicing into live effect. And so it works in both ways as well. And it also means that you're now making the most and applying again what you've learned in the field to your degree, to what you're doing. In my final essays, in my final exams, I referred to 2 or 3 of my volunteering experiences, not to sound cool, but just because it's like, oh, I've learned a similar situation about this that is actually relevant right now to my degree. And so it also helps to just have that effect as well. And yeah, those who spent a lot of their time not doing it and just thinking the degree was going to be enough, at the end of the day, it comes back. It comes back to show that you didn't put yourself out there, you didn't apply yourself. That's another thing. Obviously, like I said, clubs, it's a competition. They want to win. They're going to look to hire the best people, and the ones who are more attractive are the ones who have shown the dedication to take their own time out to learn themselves, to apply their craft, to do all these things. That's what clubs are looking for. They don't want to train you. They don't want to. They're not going to find you just because you've done a degree. I would say the degree is almost the easy part. The hard part is learning the skills, going out there, doing the best. And what's nice about football, I'd say everywhere really, is there's a football club in all parts of the world. Someone, somewhere I would like to hope, can find access to a football club. So you can learn from any level. Football kind of works the same way across the board. They need social media managers, they need stewards, they need development directors, they need a marketing team, they need coaches. So you can learn the skills quite easily because most places in the world have a football team somewhere close by. And I think that it's a good place to learn. It's such a good place to start and build your experiences and build your skills and just learn and, like I said, prepare yourself in the best way possible. Because also, I would say, sorry, the last part is opportunities to work at top teams or even teams in general don't come around very often. Clubs, generally speaking, during the season will not hire that many people. So the window for that is so slim that you have to be as prepared as you can for when it comes, because once it goes, it's not going to come around for another year. And I just think for myself, I don't want to regret not being as best prepared as I could for when the opportunity came because I didn't take the initiative to move forwards. So it does come down to that. It comes down to willingness. It comes down to mindset. But I think if you frame it as I'm learning in football, football's what I love to do, you can enjoy it. And then it doesn't become too demanding because it's what we love to do at the end of the day. It's an industry we love to play in. Not saying that all the jobs are fun, but it is football. And so that helps, I think.
It's definitely when it comes to football, behind the scene, there's a lot going on. It's not just what you see on the pitch, but what's on the pitch is basically what's going on behind the scene.
Yeah.
If the machinery is not working well, the on pitch performances are severely hampered, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And you have many dynamics working even during a match day. You have the fans, you have the so you have to do the fan engagement, you have to do the media, you have to do the marketing, you have to also ensure safety and precautions. There might be some sort of medical emergency, which is very common, when you see the case of Christian Eriksen
Yeah.
in the Euro game which happened. It was a dreadful situation because I was watching the game live,
Yeah.
and I genuinely thought that, yeah, that is something which should not happen. But yeah, he was there after a year playing for Inter Milan, and that's the thing. That's what the medical services do basically. So if you have all these things working on and in a proper way, all of these situations, just like what happened with Ericsson and many other people, can be avoided, and have a long-term effect. But definitely, and I would genuinely ask you a very personal question. Uh, you have already been through the university, and you have your own podcast. I would just ask you to basically just describe yourself and what your strengths are before you join the university and after you have completed your degree. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Not the weaknesses, but what is it that you would something like to work on
Yeah.
in the coming future?
I think because I played, I always naturally had a competitive element. I understood that, okay, you need to be competitive to be able to win. And so that just comes from me personally. So once I got to university and eventually understood that I didn't do any volunteering for the first 5, 6 months of my time there. I was, probably doing the same as everyone else. But eventually, once I understood that, wow, this is, okay, I really got to knuckle down here and make the most of my degree, it naturally just meant that I was going out to try and do better. So I did like 3 or 4 volunteering gigs maybe at one time. I effectively, all of my free time was just doing some sort of volunteering gig. I travel. So once, like in the off season, even once university was finished, sometimes I travel back to Manchester to do some volunteering roles to make sure that I was best equipped. I think I realized early that, it's more than just a degree here, and almost put the degree to the side to make sure that I was working on bettering myself and building up connections. And that ended up benefiting because I met so many people. Even just before the podcast, I had a pretty decent level of connections, which probably also made the decision to start something like that a bit easier because I was like, okay, I know people and they know, and I've worked for a fair amount. So I would say that was a strength that helped. And then since finishing the communication thing, like I said, talking. I've never really been a natural talker. People will say different, but that's in like conversations, with my friends and talking football, whatever. When it comes to, let's say, professional talking, communicating results, communicating vision, all these things, it's still a work in progress for me. But things like the podcast, getting comfortable talking to people as well, it's a great skill to have if you can build a connection and a rapport with someone. Because when it comes to, hopefully you find the right person to work in for a club. Sometimes if they just like you, it helps. If they just see you as a person that's, decent, respectful, all these things, and they like to have a conversation with you, they know you can, effectively talk, they know a bit more about you, it helps. And, sitting in the room with people that I've never met before and having a conversation with them, or sitting on a call with someone that I've never met before and trying to have a conversation with them has been developed through talking on a podcast like this, just outreaching. I'd be so nervous when I send a request to someone to come on my podcast, because I was just naturally very shy, thinking, oh, I don't think they're going to do this, but I'll try anyways. Whereas now it's a bit easier to do that because I've just done it and put it into practice for the last nearly year. Again, that will help because now I'm easier when talking to people and a lot more calm. And so it, it it's a work in progress, but those skills that I've learned and I'm still trying to learn have been really helpful to meet more people, have more connections, do more things. And I see that as a benefit. I see that as a positive. And, it's not like what this is, even you yourself, it's not, a genius grand idea, is it? It's simple, but it it's helpful. I'm sure you find positives when you're doing it as well, that you might not have even realized you had before doing the podcast. But just through talking to people, building rapport, asking questions, when I'm in an event with someone, I can ask a question just to learn, but it's natural. Whereas it would have taken me like two or three stabs to maybe even ask a really rubbish question. I'd just be muttering. But through doing those things and actively working on them, it helps. So I think just always wanting to improve yourself is a big thing. Not a skill for me, but I think just for anyone, because you can always learn new things. And particularly in the industry where, you have to keep evolving, keeps changing. That's another thing with football. Tech, technology changes, trends change. So it's never standing still. So being able to evolve yourself as a person, I think, is always a benefit alongside, obviously, whatever else it is that you're doing, hopefully, which is actively engaging the industry.
It's good to hear. It's good to hear that you are your self critic basically. And it's very important in today's world to know your strengths, but also know your weaknesses,
Yeah,
because the weaknesses basically drags you down.
yeah,
Not you, but in general, it drags everybody down if you don't work on your weakness. And I'll definitely, ask you another personal question, but that would be at the end of the episode. What I would like to ask you is what, because you have already completed your degree and everything, but there is always something which any person, not just you, but even myself, I believe that I would have done better if I would have done it in a separate way during my graduation or during my studying years. So what is it that if you got the chance to do your education once again, what would have been a different perspective, or what would have changed from your end to basically get the better result at the end of the degree?
I think writing down a bit more what I was learning as I was going along, and not in terms of revising and preparing for tests, but personally, what did you get out of today's lecture? What did today teach you about football? What did you think of today's lecture? All these different types of internal analysis, I think, would have helped, because then you're also personally reflecting on what's going on all the time. I think if I'd have done a bit more outside research in terms of keeping up to date with news articles and what people think of the industry, what people think of a certain news topic probably would have helped as well because I just think my understanding would have been a bit better. There were definitely times where maybe because I was focused on other things, I wasn't as, you know, I didn't take the time to reflect properly on what was going on. So that would have been a good a good thing to do. Also, I'd say volunteering or starting from a bit of an earlier time, just I think naturally would have helped, maybe build some more experiences. But I think it can help to know what you're thinking as well, like what's going on, like I said, with the writing, because then you can make more assessments. Even when I was volunteering, I think if I'd written down from each day, what did you get from today's experience? What did it teach you? What went right? What went wrong? You can apply that to lectures as well. What went right? What went wrong? Because then you just build a bit more of a bank of knowledge and of evidence. And I think it can help people, when they're going through things. I think taking more risks, not crazy risks, but just in terms of internships. There are definitely a few internships that I didn't look down upon, but I just didn't think fit me, which maybe they could have done, which could have led to a different outcome. But again, who knows? I think it was good to think back on those things because then I can apply them now to my life into right, what I didn't do at university can I do right now? Can I think about how each episode of a podcast went or each conversation with a person went, what went well, what went wrong? What would I do if I started again? Looking into the industry in specifics. If a news article comes out, what do you think of that? Is it good? Is it bad? All these things of a self-reflection. I would definitely do that again and do it in a bit more detail because I think that would have really advanced my way of thinking about football, about clubs, businesses, all these things.
Well, that's really great to hear. And I did mention that I'll ask you a personal question, but so I know you might be thinking about it for quite some time, even after your degree. But in an ideal world, what would be the dream job for you, and where would it be?
I would love to be a CEO of a Premier League football club. I toss and turn between whether I want to do a club or FIFA or the Premier League as the dream, as the place to be. I'd probably say like being the CEO of Manchester City would be the dream because I think being part of a club and seeing your club winning and being the driving force for seeing your club winning would be just the most surreal feeling, I think. Seeing the team win the Premier League, seeing all the fans being happy, recreating a level of happiness that you would want, I just think would be unbelievable. And I'm sure the pride that the directors get, but specifically the CEO, because you're so involved in everything. And I like to be like that. Even when I'm playing on the pitch, I like to be involved in the team's success. So being so involved in every single department and seeing it on the pitch live would just be perfect. That would be the most ideal scenario.
Well, if you do become the CEO of Manchester City, I would definitely interview you once again.
I'll get you some free
Uh, you know,
tickets.
yeah, definitely, and being a United fan, I would not be that happy, but I would be happy for you as a person. No, no, it's good that it's good to have a goal in mind. Because that is what you work towards. Then, in my
Yeah,
opinion, if because if you don't have a goal in mind, you don't know where you would be going. So it's
yeah,
great to see that you have that goal set in your mind, and I really wish and really hope that you do achieve that goal of becoming a CEO,
they do.
maybe of Man City, but yeah, definitely of some other club. No, no, definitely, and it's such a good conversation to have when it comes to people like us, basically, who are willing to give everything,
Yeah,
not just for ourselves but also for the football industry in general. And it's great to hear from someone who is at the heart of basically football but the best of football when it comes to the European sides. So it was definitely a very good podcast. And what would be your message to the audience that would be listening to this podcast? What would be your recommendations?
I would say focus on what tasks you can do better next and constantly evolving and improving. You're not going to get it right the first time. You might not even get it right the first 5 times, but if you're improving along the journey, you will get it right eventually. And the mistakes are just part of the lesson. Don't be afraid to make the mistake because that's the only way you learn.
Yeah, and coming from someone who used to not be able who was not able to communicate easily to now hosting a podcast, that definitely feels a sort of an upgrade. So thank you so much for your insights, David, and it was
Thanks for
a
having me.
really good chat to have you. And I hope you have the greatest of successes with your podcast and maybe in your CEO journey as well.
No, you too.
So
Thank you
thank
so
you
much
so
for
much
having me on.
for yeah, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. And definitely we'll be in touch.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
because
I've
we
really
have
enjoyed it.
to we have to take that mantle of getting the youngsters into the football industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much, David. And this is Dr. Tanish Khatia from the Football Digest podcast signing off.